Most parents spend years planning for their children's future. They save up for college, they save up for school, weddings, even helping them buy that first house. But what happens when there is an unexpected situation, like a divorce? Who then is going to take care of these children? Who is going to look out for their best interest? What needs to be done in this situation where you go from one nuclear family to now two households? So today, this is what we're going to be discussing on Casa Familia and Legacy. My name is attorney Alina Nuñez, and I'm here to talk to you about topics that affect your home, they affect your family, and they affect your future and your legacy. And I'm very happy to have with me family law attorney Ana Augusto here today to talk a little bit more on the family law issues, divorce, custody, and how those play into your casa, your familia, and your legacy. So Ana, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with people who are looking for more information. I'm Ana Augusto. I'm a divorce and family law attorney. I have had my firm now since 2017, and I've been an attorney, believe it or not, over 20 years now. And I started with family law back in Dade Legal Aid, and it was actually the best place to get started, to get the most exposure to cases that are complicated, because family law is about family issues and problems. And so it takes a lot to get through it, and it takes guidance in order for someone to navigate it, as you said, it from one family into two, because that's the outcome.
So as an attorney, I remember in law school, I did a family law clinic, even though I wasn't really ever interested in doing family law because it's very emotional, and I don't know if I could like separate my emotions from, the cases and when I go home. But I said, I want to check it out. I want to do a family law clinic and see, if this is something that would interest me. And it was a wonderful experience, but it's definitely where I realized this is not what I want to do. Let me deal with properties, estate plan. Let me be a boring lawyer drafting documents. But there's a lot of emotion, a lot of different factors that goes into it. So what prompted you when you start off at Dade Legal Aid, or what made you have interest in family law and pursuing this for the next 20 plus years?
I think, so a little background. So I started out as a teacher. And so I was used to helping the community by helping the children through school. And so when I became an attorney, one of the things that I had to adjust was the idea that, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to be as helpful to the community, because it was something built by my parents into me as I grew up. But then the opportunity came in when I started working for Dade Legal Aid. So instead of helping the children, it became helping the parents. And so I discovered that I enjoyed helping them, because at the time that you're navigating, whether it's a divorce or a custody, it feels like you're in a black tunnel where you don't know what's next. You don't know how you're going to get to that next level, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, you don't see an end to it.
Ever. You feel that you're trapped, and that what you built and the stability that you built for your children, all of that kind of like, the rug has been pulled from under you, and you can no longer figure out what's next. And so as a divorce attorney, one of the things that we are able to do, because we have the experience, we know the law, is to how to strategically, because there's some thought that has to go into it, how do you navigate it so that you can actually make the best of a very, very horrible situation to get to the other side. And so that was one of the things that I discovered, that I do enjoy working with the clients, but it took a lot personally of growing up in order for me to figure out boundaries so that I could actually help my clients be productive for them, and at the same time be able to have a life as an individual, away from some of the stressful situations that we see in our cases. And so, yes, I discovered that I enjoyed it, and I've been able to continue to help many clients because of that.
Yeah, I remember in the clinic that I took in law school, one of the things we had to do was observe a family law hearing. So I went down with a colleague of mine, a friend of mine in class, and we sat there and we watched this hearing. And it was like a relocation hearing. The mom was petitioning to relocate out of Dade County to like North Florida and take the child with her. So this is something that would have changed pretty much 50-50 custody, where the child, saw both parents even amount of time for the most part, to now being the majority of the custody with mom in North Florida. So it's not something that's an hour, 2 hours. We're talking
Right.
about, I think it was in not Tallahassee, and maybe in Jacksonville, where now the dad would only get to see this child during, summer breaks,
Mhm.
holidays, and that's it.
Right.
And I remember sitting there and going, oh my God, like this is a huge thing. Like as an attorney, if for whatever reason I'm not prepared enough or I don't, things go wrong, it
Mhm.
alters that child's life, that parent's life, where all of a sudden, the child is relocated, new school, new friends. And it was a lot of pressure. And that one hearing is really what said, you know what? If heaven forbid I make a mistake, knock on wood, on a real estate transaction or something like that, it's fixable. It's not going to be taking someone's child away. And that to me, that was so heavy that's why I said, oh, no, no, no. It takes a special kind of person to do this. And it is
Yeah,
not me.
and it also goes hand in hand with discussing things with the client so that they can potentially see what are the outcomes in court. Because at the end of the day, when we go to court and we are fighting for everything, judges are human beings who have bad days and sometimes make bad calls.
Yes.
And so sometimes the results may be unexpected depending on the facts that are very intensive. The one that you mentioned, for example,
Yeah.
for someone to be able to relocate, they have to meet a certain burden in order to be able to overcome the rights of the other parent, the father, for example,
Yeah.
and not participating in the life of their child to the same extent that they did before.
Yeah.
And so the court have this very heavy job of making decisions. Luckily, we do have a statute that does now list. Before, it wasn't so clear. Since 2023, now there's the requirement that judgments have to actually consider what are the factors that affect and influence what is in the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
So those are the facts that the court has to evaluate to make decisions.
What is one thing, if you can't pick just one, but what is something that we can share that you wish either party that comes to you to file a divorce that they would know or do in anticipation of that might make the process a little easier,
Mhm.
or what's one advice you would give to someone?
I think that when we're contemplating filing a divorce or a custody case, anything like that, we need to start thinking about what is in the best interest of the child. The mom or dad, the wife or husband may not be good spouses.
Mhm.
But as a parent, we need to then close the door on the relationship that they have and think about how do we make sure that that child has both parents in their life, because the court is going to look at it like that.
Yes.
And so sometimes the problems that that couple had, they bring it into the case. And I have to remind them, we're going in front of the judge. The judge does not care whether you like each other. The judge is looking at, this is the case that I have. I have a child, and this child is entitled to have mom and dad. How do I make that happen? And so parents that come in with the idea that I am the only one that needs to be in the life of the child have a rude awakening when they go in front of the court. And the court says, but mom or dad, that's not realistic. We need the child to have a family, and the family is both parents being involved. I think that is one of the things that we educate our clients when they hire us right away so that they understand the expectation and to change the focus.
I was going to ask you, would that tie into, let's say, a myth or a misconception that most people have, that in a divorce or in family law, it favors the mom or it favors the wife, and that, moms have more rights or moms have certain automatic rights versus dads?
And you hit it right on the nail,
Yeah.
because when I have a gentleman coming to see me and they are parents who are used to being involved, not just, picking up and dropping off, but they're involved cooking, they're involved in doing homework with their son or their daughter, and they want to maintain that connection.
And they do exist,
They
okay?
do
They do
exist.
exist.
I represent outstanding dads who want to be in the life of their children, who pay their child support the right amount instead of trying to nickel and dime. And so those parents are concerned with how is the court looking at my case and how do I make sure that I stay in the life of my child. And the court is not aware and does not give priority to moms. It's the opposite. It's what is the best interest of the child includes bringing in the other parent. And sometimes the court will actually say to a father, for example, that may not have been involved, custody usually when they're not married and there's a distance
Mhm.
in terms of the relationship, the court is going to give that father a second chance when they actually come into court because of that, because the court is looking at what is in the best interest of the child. So that definitely, no, the court is not looking at mom being the one that gets the majority of the time, or this case should not have, for example, a 50-50, because now the courts are required to look at why not equal time sharing.
Yeah.
And that is where the court actually starts their determination.
That's good because there are fathers and mothers and vice versa, both parties that are equally involved. Yes, one might have a more involvement, but that doesn't mean that the other parent has, less responsibility and wants to be
Correct.
involved in that child's life. So I know it probably can be very frustrating.
Mhm.
People assume or have that misconception of, oh, I'm the dad. Courts are not going to favor me, because that stigma of deadbeat
does.
dad.
Correct.
And, so it's good for people to understand and know that that's not the case.
Correct.
Not that.
And I will add one more thing, and this is for parents who are not married. And the fathers, when they come to see me, they think that because they're on the birth certificate, that they then have equal rights. And they still have to file a paternity case in order for them to be able to have the equal rights, because the statute changed, but they need to take action. And so the
Okay.
court is going to look at a dad who comes into court who hasn't been in contact with their child maybe for years, and the court is not going to give them equal time sharing just because they're showing up in court. And so that's, I think, the other myth that they have, that being on the birth certificate is enough to be able to just
prove.
show up and, I'm picking up where I left off and no time has passed by. No, the court is going to
It's
say,
like,
no,
not so
sir.
fast, not so
Slow
fast.
down. Exactly. Because it's how do we protect the child?
Yeah. Okay. So now let's jump ahead a little bit. Let's say we've gotten through the divorce process. We've kind of we have that divorce. We have our parenting plan and time shared, all that in place. Now, when it comes to, now you have two houses, right? You have two families. You have mom and dad. And obviously, they're divorced. They're not going to be in agreement. I see this from an estate planning side. This is a question that I get asked a lot, or I'll have, when they come to me say, okay, well, I have a minor child. We want to do the estate plan. Great. We can sit down and go through. But then one of the questions I always bring up, and one of the things for them to consider is, what happens? You need to think about, what if you pass away? Who would you want to be able to step in and take guardianship of your child? Now, bio dad or mom, the other parent is going to have priority.
Correct.
They're going to have, it's not like you can just say, oh, but well, I want my mom to step in, abuela to step in my shoes. And now dad is co-parenting con abuela. Doesn't always happen that way. So talk a little bit in regards to that. Have you come across situations where now we're divorced, we're considering, okay, your case is done, you're divorced. What's going to happen with this minor child if something were to happen to you? What do you advise your clients they should have in place?
I always tell them that they need to have an estate plan in place. And although you're correct that the biological parent is going to have the priority, if they have an estate plan and they're naming someone else, at least their wishes are in
Exactly.
writing. And so they give them, that person, the ability to go into court with those documents and at least be able to, perhaps in a guardianship if necessary, if the person can no longer take care of their child, at least you have somebody else who could take care of, if not of the person, then at least of the finances.
Exactly.
And so that gives some comfort to them as they're planning for a future that is uncertain. And parents who, for example, are not married, one of the things that I always tell them is you need to make sure that you have an estate plan in place, because in order for you to be able to protect that child, there should be that. Now, I do have a few cases where the parents were able to set aside their differences and they actually have it that they inherit one to the other for the benefit of their children. And I have quite a few of those. So
That's wonderful.
they were able to work out their differences and they were aligned with the idea that no matter how many new spouses they had, they wanted to protect their inheritance and to have the other parent take care of their child. And I think that's how, parents have to think once the divorce is over. It's let's do a new estate plan. Let's
Yes.
figure out how do we protect what we have built so that our children will actually get it and we have somebody designated to take care of them if something happens to the other parent.
Absolutely. And at times I'll have clients that come to me and maybe they're in the middle of a divorce process, but it hasn't been finalized. And they're like, well, what do? I want to redo my estate planning. And I tell them, well, this is something we have to do once your divorce is finalized.
Right.
Until that final judgment is not signed, I hate to say it, you're still married to the person. Maybe you reconcile. The court, we can't disinherit that spouse. We can't really make those major decisions as far as the estate planning until that divorce is finalized. So I'm like, definitely come see me once your divorce is finalized. In the meantime, though, we can do like the power of attorneys where your spouse does not have to be the one named to make those decisions. So I'm like, okay, if it would give you some comfort while you're in the middle of the divorce that you don't want ex-husband or soon to be ex-husband to be the one go, hey, pull the plug. If something happens, then yes, we can do, the healthcare surrogate, living wills, powers of attorneys, and like you mentioned, the designation of a guardian for that child.
Correct.
If they have a minor child, just in case, por si acaso, but the actual estate plan, putting together a trust or how the assets are going to be distributed, that we do have to wait till they're divorced, because until the judge doesn't sign off on that order, you're still, and I actually had one case in my 20 plus years where one of the parties passed away.
I've had a few.
In the middle of a divorce.
I've had a few. And so now I've actually, I do tell my clients that they need to have their estate plan done, even though we have not finalized the divorce, because we've had that situation. And it has happened quite a few times. So it's like, it's uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. And people who are going through some medical issue are the ones that need to make sure that they do that, because we don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. One day you're here, you're perfectly fine. The next day, heaven forbid, something were to happen. And, as my father would say, para morirse, hay que estar vivo. That's it.
And you got to plan. And that's the idea. We plan for everything. The weddings are so spectacular.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't take care of the decisions about our health.
Absolutely.
And those are the things that we need to prioritize.
So what would you say are some of the challenges that can arise when family members disagree about what is best for the child?
I think one of them is, and I see it more now, parents who they've decided not to get the divorce going. So they've separated, and in Florida, we don't have like a separation. It's not a legally binding event.
Correct. No,
yes,
there is no
that
legal
does not exist.
separation in Florida.
None.
That's not a status.
And I think the other one that I'll add in here, because it comes up all the time,
Common law.
You cannot abandon. Oh, I was going to say that too. But you cannot just leave the house and that's abandonment and you've lost all your rights.
Correct.
That's the other thing that immediately people are thinking that, oh my God, I can't move out.
Yes.
And sometimes they stay in relationships where there is domestic violence.
Correct.
And that's because they have the idea sometimes from, other countries that if they move out, immediately they lose everything. That's not the case. But consult with an attorney just in case.
Yes.
So to come back. So one of the things that we need to also think about is, oh my God, I just blanked out.
It's okay.
I totally blanked out. I went in that direction. What
we
were
talked
talking
about common law marriages. We're talking
Yes.
about abandonment.
Okay.
So those are all myths.
Myths. But you asked me something. Oh my God.
Is as far as what challenges can arise when family
The
members
separation.
disagree
The
about
idea of
what's
the
best for the
separation.
child.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. All right. So when the divorce hasn't been filed, but they've already decided to live apart, so they're living apart, they've crafted their own time sharing, whatever that happens to be, and they move on like that for a period of time. Then they come to see me and they're no longer happy with that visitation agreement that they have. The oral agreement that they reached may be very good for one of the two, but the client that comes to see me and says, but I want more time. And they've already agreed to this time sharing that minimizes what they have. And we're going in front of the court. So that can be negative to them, but the opposite applies. For example, you were talking about the relocation, and sometimes
Yep.
for financial reasons, one of the parents says, I need to move to an area of Miami that is more affordable.
Yeah.
So the distance increases, the number of nights has to decrease because the parent has a schedule that doesn't allow them to actually drop off and pick up the children, and they're negatively impacted by that. Time goes by. And to reclaim the idea that I want to be involved in the same with the 50-50 when there's distance or work schedule that doesn't allow it,
possible.
it's not possible. And so I think that's one of the downsides for not consulting with an attorney early enough before decisions are made that then can negatively impact the case.
Okay. And so what would you say what mistakes or how can these issues be avoided by having conversations or what could they do, whether it's amongst themselves or even with their attorney and having this conversation? Like, what are some suggestions you would have?
Well, in the age that we live in, ChatGPT does not have all the answers. TikTok attorneys
Oh my
are
gosh.
not the ones that we need to listen.
Don't
And you
even
get all of
me
those.
started on the TikTok. Although I know I do a lot of videos and I put out a lot of content, but it's probably at least once a week that I get a TikTok forwarded to me by someone going, "Is this true? Is this and I hired this attorney." I literally had someone tell me that they hired an attorney that they saw on TikTok and then when I looked up that attorney, what they hired them for is not what they like specialize in. I'm like, okay.
But it happens a lot, you know, and
does.
so they come in with this idea that is not rooted in the law for Florida. And so when we sit down and we talk about what the statute says and what the factors are and what have you been doing, I think that's where the information matches up with the facts and the law so that you have a base for making the decisions that need to be made before you actually pull the plug and get divorced. There is some preparation that should take place because in order to strategize and be able to position the children for the best outcome so that their routine, so that decisions that will influence them and affect them are not going to be harmful, because that's what we want to avoid.
Yeah. And I remember from my law school days, it's always whatever is in the best interest of the child.
Correct. That has not changed.
That is what the
remains
court
same.
is going to look at. That's what the court is going to base themselves on. And that is what, they're going to do. So if someone has, let's say they had their estate planning done while they were married, husband and wife, wonderful. They maybe did wills, they did a trust, they did everything. Now they got divorced. Divorce is finalized. And they haven't, let's say, updated their estate plan, or now they're so overwhelmed with the divorce process. What would be your suggestion from a family law perspective and seeing what happens? What would be your suggestion of certain things that people need to take care of post-divorce?
For the most of the divorces, we resolve the issues related to the houses because as part of the settlement agreement that we need to reach, that transition, the transfer, we do take care of that. But when we are in the process of finalizing that divorce, one of the things that we suggest is go and take this to an estate plan attorney who has experience and does that so that you can get the advice of what is next. We want to make sure that we remove people who are in our bank accounts, for example, because that's something that I'm not going to be taking care of. That is the responsibility of the client. And they need to be aware that the consequences of not doing that can be very harmful. Now, if they're on property, and this is perhaps happens most of the time when someone gets divorced without an attorney and they remain on the property as husband and wife after the divorce. Now they're just co-tenants, so that 50% interest of each. But they don't realize what happens if one of the two passes away and what are the consequences and the inheritance, the way that it works. So I think that that's something that needs to be reviewed with an estate planning like yourself so that they know the consequences and they can make the decisions.
I have that situation right now in my office where she put her husband on title. The property was hers. She put her husband on title back in 2010 because they were refinancing. He stayed on title. They got divorced. So now it's tenants in common, 50-50. They did the divorce themselves. They didn't have any, minor children or anything. So, in their eyes, it was a very simple divorce, went down to the courthouse, filled out the papers and so forth. But fast forward to 2026 and the lady passed away.
Ooh.
And so they're doing the probate of the property. They're trying to sell the property. And I'm like, no, no, no. My gentleman still owes. And there was nothing addressed in the marital settlement agreement.
Oh,
Because there
wow.
wasn't one. They did it
Correct.
themselves. And it's become a total disaster. And I'm working now with the probate attorney for the deceased ex-wife and my client. And it's become a total arroz con mango, as we say in Spanish.
Yeah, and it's a costly mistake.
Very.
Because they could have resolved it easily. Even after the divorce, they could have just gone to an attorney, created some kind of a settlement agreement
Yep.
to divide it so that then they could leave it nice and clean for their children.
Yeah.
So that way no one has to resolve it. But that is what happens, unfortunately, when you take matters onto your own hands. And in the eyes of the court, the fact that you're not an attorney does not excuse you. So they're held to the same level as an attorney. So they couldn't have gone back to court and say, okay, judge, we need help with this. Even the judge would have been like, "Oh, but you have nothing in writing."
Exactly. So, all right. Well, we have a couple of what we call rapid fire questions. We're
Mhm.
going to go through and see some, frequently asked questions or situations that we have. So, how often should family review their legal documents, even after a divorce? If they have like a parenting plan, or let's say they have any type of a time sharing plan or
Mhm.
things like that, how often would you suggest that they take a look at their situation, review their documents?
I think when there's transitions or changes in their life, sometimes it's a new job that makes the pickup and the drop off change. Maybe someone who has a job that requires them to travel. And so the parent may be affected and the same amount of time may be reviewed. So that would be one that I think would be a change would be required. Sometimes it's because the excellent school, now the child has finished it, they need to choose a new school. And so now they have to evaluate. And that would be something that perhaps if they did a parenting plan with an attorney, we include those provisions. Sometimes it's the parent that has the better school rating is the one that we designate. So that way we can simplify it. But those would be some of the reasons. Medical reasons. Sometimes the child has some condition that was not aware of at the time the divorce happened. And this now may lead to therapy, and maybe they need to be in a different school. I had one like that, and the child was diagnosed. They were divorced when the child was very young. So at that time, they did not know that he was in the spectrum. When that was diagnosed, then now they chose a school that provided the child with a better schooling with all the therapies that they needed. And they needed to then make a modification to the plan to account for that. And then that came with a higher cost.
Yep.
So we had to also take a look at child support and how do we split the difference now. And those things have to be considered when we are evaluating the initial plan that should be done the right way the first time,
Yep.
but then that can be a modification. And if it's not by agreement, then you need to go back into court. And going back for a modification, the standard is a little bit higher than when you do it initially. So that's why making sure that the parenting plan, the time sharing is done the right way is so important.
Yeah. And like anything in life, even when we talk about, when I tell my clients when they should review their estate plan, it's whenever there's a major change in life
Correct.
event, a birth, a death, a marriage, a divorce, exactly that. There's a change in a circumstance. You should always, it's not a, every 2 years or every 3 years. There's no set time,
Mhm.
but anytime there's a change like that, definitely they should
Correct.
reevaluate it. So in your opinion, or do you believe that do blended families need additional planning or something different?
I think they need more planning because it's always difficult to change the routine. And so now there's two families with different children that have different routines, and making that happen, that transition, I think, and I've seen it successfully done in a few cases where my client actually considered the time sharing that the children from the new spouse had in order to accommodate it. So that way they created an environment that was better for their child, but at the same time, they now promoted the relationship with the half siblings. And that was one of the things that they were able to get done. So I think that that would be one of the considerations. The next one would be school, because if they have different schools, that makes the transition so much harder.
It does. Absolutely. Because then you're factoring in that.
Hmm.
So, all right. As we're wrapping this up, I want to ask, what has working with families taught you about what matters most to parents?
I think parents want to protect their children from the uncertainty that we know as adults comes with the divorce and the child custody cases. They want to make sure that the life that they established during the relationship continues on. So that if the family was able to provide extracurricular activities, they want to make sure that the children continue to have the same extracurricular activities, continue to have access to the friends that they have made, that they don't change schools simply because now we're forced to now move to an area that perhaps it's more affordable. They want to make sure that they continue and provide the stability to the children. I think that that's what all parents want. They want their children to have a better life than the life that, we had.
Absolutely.
That's what my parents wanted,
Yeah,
and I'm sure your parents had the same
absolutely.
idea.
So thank you so much, Anna, for being here. I'll give you the last couple seconds to share information, how people can reach you if they are going through a divorce, anticipating one, or have any questions.
Call my office. That would be the number one. My phone number is 305-507-7655. They can contact my website, augustolaw.com, and they can actually submit information and schedule a meeting with me so that way we can sit down, we can figure out, what's best for their situation because every single family is a different scenario.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching Casa Familia Legacy. And I hope you have found this information valuable.